live look outside from the Oregon coast. Our In Its Spanish Head resort hotel camera in Lincoln City. Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. Our next guest has lived through some extreme highs and lows, but it wasn't until he ended up in the hospital that he discovered those extremes were caused by undiagnosed bipolar disorder. He is now sharing his story of living with mental illness in the new book, The Maniac with No Knees. We welcome Tyler Kania. Thank you so much for joining us, Tyler.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's talk about the knees first because they're in the title. You had some really serious injuries that took you away from sports, which were so important to you.
Yeah, definitely. I've ruptured both of my patellar tendons, and this is a very rare injury. It happens once for every 147,000 human years. And so to do it twice is kind of like discovering life on other planets.
Yeah. So you were a pretty serious rugby player, right, when all this started unfolding?
Yeah, I had ambitions to play at the highest level. I played the fly half position, which is a lot similar to quarterback in football.
What was it like for you when you had to be sidelined initially? I mean, I imagine that was a big part of your identity, the sport.
Yeah, it was a huge part of my, what gave me confidence, what gave me pride. It was, my community, and it was the goals that I had for my future. And I tell people that struggle with mental illness that, two to the three things that you need to live a healthy life is a community to belong to and a goal to wake up every morning to. And so when you take those away, in my case, it was rugby, you can feel pretty lost.
That makes a lot of sense the way you describe it. So was it going through these injuries was that a difficult time in terms of experiencing some mania and depressive episodes? I imagine that would just be so taxing.
Yeah. I mean, mania typically occurs when there's, something traumatic happening in your life. The first time I ever had a manic episode was following my first ruptured patellar tendon. And, that, you know, completely devastated every part of my life. Mania can be pretty scary. It can feel righteous, but it's like a runaway train. In the end, you're gonna hit something.
Sure. How long were you dealing with these kinds of symptoms and feelings before you were finally able to come to a diagnosis?
A long time. So typically, bipolar doesn't manifest until your mid 20s. I probably was showing symptoms around 21, 22. But it wasn't until I was 30 that I was actually diagnosed with it. So, I went through a lot of difficult years and years of just like not understanding my own behavior. And so to finally have an answer for what was going on in my life was really, helpful for, carving the path forward.
Tell me about writing the book, because I imagine a lot of people will connect to your experience and go, wow, I wasn't walking alone in this. There are other people who are going through something very similar.
Well, you're definitely right about that. I think, one thing that I noticed when I was institutionalized was, how much more fortunate I was than a lot of the people around me that were really suffering in really traumatic ways. But, I didn't seek out to become a writer. I was pretty much ashamed of who I was. But when I ruptured my patellar tendon for the second time, I had a manic episode, and, I just opened the notes app on my iPhone and I just started publishing my life story to Instagram. And I ended up having to be hospitalized for that manic episode. But when I got out, I had all this positive feedback, and that pushed me to actually sit down and write something coherent for the world to see. Because I do think a lot of people with mental illness struggle with just feeling ashamed and feeling like they're not, um, they're completely alone in the world. But um, this book can be a companion to them. And for the general public, this book can be something that can definitely educate you and give you a better understanding and empathy for, people with mental illness, because I do think that we have some ways to go as far as knocking down the stigma.
For sure. You share a lot of vulnerability, and it's hard to kind of relive some of those moments, but it feels like you found great purpose and joy in writing. Do you think you'll pursue future projects?
Yeah, absolutely. Creating something is what I love to do. It's what I think humans love in general. And, I'm working on a second book of short essays about mental illness, about suicide, about addiction, things like that. And I'm really excited about, inspiring people and helping people to, have a better understanding of what this all is.
Yeah, we really appreciate you sharing your story with us. Thanks for stopping by, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Tyler's book
Appreciate it.
again is The Maniac with No Knees, and we'll have more information on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.